So say something.
Am I ready to go?
Well, you're.
This is the.
This is your. This is your finest hour right here on film.
Am I ready to speak?
It's all yours.
Well, this is the story of one Billy Wayne Field, who grew up in Oklahoma. I first discovered when I was playing in the attic in the home I grew up in, 212 West Lincoln, Blackwell, Oklahoma. I found my adoption papers. And I think I was about 8 years old at the time. And consequently, when I read in those papers the said Billy Wayne Field, I was very curious about the language. And as time grew on, I began to understand what the situation was. I had been left on the doorstep of the home of Marshall and Anna Field in Blackwell, Oklahoma. One thing that I give my birth mother great credit for was having the good sense to put me in a home like theirs. I couldn't have been in a better place to grow up in, nor could I have had a better surrogate mother and father than they were. They were absolutely marvelous. And I first found out when I graduated from high school, and my picture was in the paper, that I had a birth mother that was still living. Because she saw my picture in the paper and she came to see me after getting permission from the lady who truly reared me, Clemmy Arbuckle. And the woman who wanted to come and see me was named Margaret Conkling. That was her married name. Her maiden name was Margaret Wellman. And she came from a group of fairly well-to-do people in Arkansas City, Kansas. They owned and ran a series of vans, moving vans, and as I understand, they did very well in that business. And her name was Wellman. That was her maiden name. Well, when she came to see me, my first wife was present. And when she left, my first wife said to me, "Bill, I guess you know that was your real mother, don't you?" I said, "No, I wasn't aware of that." She said, "Well, all you had to do was look at her hands and to know that she was your mother." And I said, "Well, fine, it's good to know." And the incident of knowing that I had a real mother didn't surprise me and didn't make me unhappy to know it. And her name was Margaret. And I was so pleased to know who my birth mother was that I named my daughter after her. And I know that some of the family thought that was very strange that I did that, but I felt like I wanted to do it, so I did.
What was her last name?
Wellman.
How was that spelled?
Wellman. And they were all from Arkansas City, Kansas. When Margaret Wellman became pregnant with me, it was a situation like it is even in many cases today. The man who was responsible for it, whose name was Eshelman, he didn't want to take the responsibility. So Margaret Wellman and her sister, after I was born, someplace in eastern Colorado, took me to the most likely house they could find, at least this is the story I've been told, where I might be well brought up. And that happened to be on the doorstep of Marshall and Anna Field.
So you were born in a hospital in eastern Colorado.
Apparently.
And what were the circumstances around your mother getting there to birth you?
A very nice man by the name of Christie took care of her. An older man.
Christie? Or?
Yeah. I think no, it was Y on the end of it.
Oh, okay.
And he had taken the responsibility of seeing to it that she got the proper care that she needed, and which was very good.
Now, was your mother, was Mr. Christie a friend of Marshall Field?
No.
How did they know to
I
take
don't
you to
really,
that house?
I don't really know how that came about.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, when Margaret Wellman saw my picture in the local paper, and apparently she had come to Blackwell, Oklahoma many times to observe me growing up. She told me about how she and her sister would come and sit in the car just a few feet or blocks away from where I played and watched me a good deal of the time.
Now, the picture that she saw was your high school graduation picture?
Yes, that's it.
Uh-huh.
And she asked permission from Clemmy, the woman who actually reared me, if she could come and see me. And Clemmy told her yes, she may if she didn't say anything about my background. And she did not do that. She was a very large woman, and that's where we get the size in our family. It's from the Wellmans, I'm quite sure. And I was glad to know her. I never did meet her sister, however, who played an important role in this as far as my finding out about my past.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote me a letter and told me some of the important things that I needed to know. Well, outside of that was very uneventful.
So when were you born?
I was born on September the 14th, 1922.
1922.
Mm-hmm. And
it was shortly thereafter, like right afterwards, that you were taken to Marshall Field's house?
Field's home, right. And apparently, when they found me on the doorstep, it made quite a stir in the family, and everybody came to see me, and I've been babied ever since.
Now tell me what was the Field household like? I mean, what was the Field family like? How many? The family that you came into.
Yes.
There were how many brothers and sisters? And
well, there were two brothers and three sisters.
and what were their names?
Well, Fred was the eldest, and
How much older than you was he?
well, quite a
Remember?
bit. I don't know exactly how many years, but Alan, who was the next, was 9 years older than I.
Okay.
And then there was Aline and Dorothy and Clemmy.
So Clemmy was the youngest,
Girls. No, Clemmy was the oldest.
oldest of all the kids.
Yeah, she was the oldest.
So how many? She must have been like 25 years older than you.
Oh, yeah, he's older.
Yeah. Okay.
And she had married a farmer who lived out south of Blackwell, Oklahoma. His name was Herman Arbuckle, and her name was Arbuckle. And she was one of the most wonderful persons that ever lived. Anyone who knew her loved her because she was so happy all the time about everything. Well, when I was 8 years old, I was straying around in the attic and I found the adoption papers. And I was amazed to know what the said Billy Wayne Field meant. I don't know where I got my first name, but I knew that I got my second name, Wayne, from a partner that was Dad's, who often financed much of my father's entrepreneur businesses that he went into. I grew up in a household that had no lack for money, even though it was during the Depression. Dad was very well to do the whole time.
Where do you think the name Billy came from? Do you have any?
I don't know. I think it was just a southern way of naming youngsters. And they often had two names like Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, and all of that.
Right.
And I was Billy Wayne.
Now, talk a little bit about Marshall Field's personal history. Where was he from?
He was born in Platte City, Missouri, and all of Mother's family was born there.
And her name was Anna?
Anna Moore.
Anna Moore.
W-O-R-E. And when she came to Blackwell, Oklahoma, most of her brothers and sisters came. Uncle Willie Moore and Uncle Walter Moore and all those people who grew up coming to Sunday dinners in the house I lived in came and followed Marshall and Anna Field to Blackwell, Oklahoma from Platte City, Missouri.
So did Marshall and Anna meet in Oklahoma, or did they meet before?
They met at Platte City.
Oh, they met in Platte City, got married, and came to Oklahoma?
Yeah, that's right. And everybody was coming to Oklahoma in those days. That's where the fortune, I guess, was to be made. But
When was that? Could you put a date on that? A rough guess?
well, I was born in
You're
22.
22, so it had to be early 1900s or late 1800s?
No, I don't think that far back. Well, I just don't really know.
Do you know how old how old was Marshall Field when you joined the family?
I know that Mother was about 57. I don't know exactly how old that was.
Was he older, you think, or younger?
A little older than she was, yes.
Yeah.
And anyway, he was always very well to do. He always had everything he needed. He took us on trips every summer to Colorado, to Arkansas, to various places.
What's your earliest childhood memory?
Well, I think it was looking down at my feet and trying to realize whether I was a boy or a girl. You know how that is.
Do you remember anything before the age of 5?
Well, I don't know that I can say that.
Yeah,
I remember.
my earliest memory happens to be when I was 4.
Mhm.
That's it. I just was curious.
No, I don't recall any.
So what
specific.
was Blackwell like?
Blackwell was a very fine town. It was a busy town. It had quite a bit of industry in it. It had a cheese plant. It had a meat packing plant. It had smelters, zinc smelters.
How large of a town? How many people?
Oh, there were over 5,000, somewhere close to 6,000 people in the town. But it was a very, very good town in Oklahoma. One of the best towns in northern Oklahoma.
And it was experiencing a lot of growth because
Oh, yeah.
people were coming in because of the oil and the energy opportunities.
Yes, there was an oil refinery there, and there was a brickyard where bricks were made. I grew up playing in the wagons that carried the bricks. I don't know how I kept from killing myself, getting in those things and going zip down the hill, you know. They were rail cars that the bricks were carried in originally. But we all did it, all of us kids did.
And lived to tell about it.
You know, fortunately. But no one could have been luckier than I was.
So let's go back to the family for a second. Clemmy was the oldest. Then came. Clemmy was the oldest girl,
Yeah.
or was the oldest child?
Yeah.
Was
I
Fred?
guess she was the eldest, and then Fred was next. Yes, that's
Then
right.
Fred. Then
Uh,
was Alan next. Then Aline.
Alan, and no, before Alan was Dorothy,
Dorothy.
and that was Lou's mother.
Right.
And then Aline and Alan. And Alan's still living. The rest of them are all gone.
What can you tell me about Frederick? What do you remember about him?
Well, he was, the thing I remember the most is his sitting at the radio and listening to the radio all the time. He worked in General Cables and had a good job. And he married Katie Snow, who was Georgia's mother. And Georgia was almost like a sister to me. We grew up together. And, well, I don't know what there is really to say.
Did he have any children?
Fred, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Fred,
I'm sorry.
Fred and Katie were married, and Georgia was their offspring. And as I say, Georgia and I were like brother and sister.
Did Fred stay in Oklahoma all of his life, or?
Yes, he ultimately had diabetes and died of it.
So was he fairly young at that?
No, he wasn't too young, but I can't tell you how old he was. I think that maybe he was about 48 or 49.
Mm-hmm.
And they called me in when he was very ill. They didn't know much what to do about it. So I sort of took hold and got the doctor there and everything. That's really the main incidents. Those are the main incidents about
So
growing up.
Frederick was married to Katie
Katie Snow.
Snow, and they had Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And then Georgia ended up coming out here to California,
That's right.
and she married
Jean Britting.
Gene Britting, and they have one daughter.
No,
Don't they have children?
I don't think they have any daughters. They had 2 or 3 sons.
Okay.
Oh yes, they did have one daughter, Kathy.
Yeah, I
They
seem to
did have
remember
one
they had a daughter.
Kathy.
Okay.
And
And they're all somewhere here in the Bay Area, as
Yeah.
far as you know.
except I don't think Kathy is. I think she got away from them fairly early.
Okay.
Anyway,
So then the next sibling was after Frederick was Clemmy. Is that what you said earlier? And you told us about.
well, I think Clemmy was the oldest. Fred was next.
I'm sorry. That's right. And you told us about Arbuckle, and they never had any children. Clemmy and
She married Herman Arbuckle.
right.
And
And did he die early at a
Yes,
fairly
he
young
did.
age?
he committed suicide.
Well, he did.
Yes, and he did because I don't know what it was. I think that he felt that he wasn't worthy of Clemmy. That's what I think. I don't know. But that was the idea that I got from it.
And she never had children,
No,
and they never, and she never remarried.
no. So they lived on a farm, the Arbuckles. She was married to Herman Arbuckle, and the Arbuckles had 2 farms there. Both of the brothers had farms,
So he had a
and
brother.
I got a lot of experience because of them, and I was always out there doing something, and
So was the farm just right outside of town? I mean, could you ride your bike there, or was it?
No, it was out in the country.
Okay, so you had to
Yeah,
get in the car.
I had to go. But Blackwell was a wonderful town to grow up in. There was no question about that.
Was there a major railroad that went through there?
Yes, there was Santa Fe and Burlington.
And Blackwell is where in the state? Is it north, south?
It's on the northern border of the state, just 12, I think almost less than 12 miles across the Kansas border.
Oh, okay.
Across the Kansas border, right in the center of the state.
Mhm.
And I know that everybody went to Blackwell because of all the industry that they had. There was a
Right.
cheese factory there, a meat packing company, zinc smelters,
Mhm.
and the Globe refinery, oil refinery in that town. It was a very well-to-do town.
What? I don't know much about Dorothy. Well, what do you remember
Dorothy
about
was
her?
a wonderful, wonderful lady. She was Lou's mother, and she died at age 28 because she had an aneurysm, which was that which also killed my mother, Anna Field.
And she died at but she lived to be in her 50s or so.
Dorothy?
No, your mother.
Yeah, she was about 57 when she died.
Right. But you were only 8 years old, I seem to remember,
That's right,
when
I
she
was
died.
28.
Right.
And I cried and cried and cried. Nobody knew. I'd go to Katie's, and I'd go upstairs and hide in Katie's closet, and I would cry and cry and cry. And nobody knew that I suffered that much from it. But,
So Dorothy died at a young age. Had she gotten married or anything like that?
oh yeah, she married Robert Foster. They had a beautiful home out south of Blackwell, and their child was Lou, Clemmy Lou. They named her after Clemmy.
Oh, her Lou's first name was Clemmy?
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Clemmy Lou. And
Lou was great.
Clemmy's whole name was
Clemmy was
Clemmy Lucille, but they named Lou
Oh.
just Clemmy Lou. That's all.
Good southern.
Mm-hmm. And
So did Dorothy have any children? Oh,
yeah, Lou.
I mean, besides Lou,
No, they didn't have any of it.
just Lou. And whatever happened to Robert Foster? You know,
Well, he was not a well digger, a roustabout, I guess, on oil wells in Oklahoma and Kansas. And he was very well to do. After Dorothy died, he married again and didn't live too much longer after that. He got hit in the face with some of the rigging one time, and that did a great deal of damage to him. And he was a wonderful man. He read all the time, and I think he engendered my love of reading.
oh, really?
Yes, I think he was the one who did it. Because every time he came to our house, he would come with his books to sit and read. And I got very interested in reading because he was a reader.
I'll be darned. That's great.
Yeah. Bob Foster was his name.
So the next child was Aline.
There was Clemmy, Fred, Dorothy, and Aline.
Right. And she. What do you remember about her?
Well, everything. She was my babysitter all the time I was growing up. Poor thing. She had to take me on all her dates with her. When I got old enough to go to the movies, then they would always spend a dime for me to go to the movies to get rid of me. But she was wonderful. She was had black hair, and she was a real Irish colleen. She just looked like that.
Yeah.
And
I remember her vividly.
His family was Irish.
She and Clemmy were best of friends. I remember.
Very close.
Eileen was wonderful. She ended up marrying a man named Chad, didn't she?
Chan Bradfield.
Chan Bradfield.
His father owned a farm out northwest of Blackwell.
So he was also from Oklahoma.
Yes.
But didn't they move out here ultimately?
Oh yes, all of them did.
Yeah.
Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did they? Who were their kids?
Aline
Yeah.
had her son Sidney, and that was all. One boy.
Where does Ann McGill come into the picture?
Let's see. I guess Anne was the daughter.
Right.
Anne was Aline's daughter.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anne was Aline's daughter.
Right. So they had two kids.
Yeah.
And something wasn't. I seem to remember something about either Sydney or Chan that they were airline pilots or flew in the Air Force or.
Sidney did.
Sydney did.
Mm-hmm.
And did he have a tragic ending because of that?
No. No, I think he's still alive, and he lives in Oswego.
Really?
And I think he's still alive.
Up in Washington. Or where? Yeah, I guess that's more like
Yes.
Oswego.
He married a very sweet girl by the name of Cynthia, and I'm sure they're still living there.
And then Anne is, of course, out in, where are they, Lafayette or
Yes.
somewhere with
She married a McGill.
I can't think of, Mac.
Yes.
With Mac, and they have three sons, Perry and Andy and Greg,
That's right.
who have all since gotten married and have children of their own. But they're all over kind of the general Bay Area.
And I suppose Greg is the real one that's the field part of their union. And you can tell it right away.
Yeah.
Ask not for whom the bell tolls.
Right, we
It
get to
tells
hear all
for
the
thee.
different clocks in the house. So you're going along and you're growing up in Blackwell and doing all the things kids do. And while you were being a kid, your father was managing,
He owned
among other things.
several businesses.
Tell us about that.
Well, his first one was in a basement on East Blackwell Avenue, and it was a bowling alley. But you had to go down the stairs to the bowling alley. And he owned several bars. In those days, you could only sell 3-2 beer because it was time prohibition.
What does that mean? 3-2 beer?
3%.
Oh, okay.
Alcohol. And 3.2%. And he had a restaurant he put in the vacant bank building there in town. He put in a restaurant and did very well with that. And he put in another place called the Shingle Inn out by the high school. And I worked for him. And all kids from high school came down to eat there at lunchtime. Then he had another place down near the zinc smelter, which drew on that crowd. When the shift was over, they all came to Marshall's place to have their beer. And then he got very busy. He swore that he was the first man to make what was called a marble table. They're called pinball machines today, but they were a marble table, and you got rid of the marbles by putting a quarter in and pushing the top that the marbles were all, and they'd fall down a hole. And then they'd come down into the front of the machine, and you pick them up and shoot them around again. Well, Dad swore that he was the first one to make a marble table. And he did that with a man who ran a wood shop by the name of Frohawk in Blackwell, Oklahoma. But he did lots of other things. He also got in business of manufacturing tear gas for banks. That was one of the things he did. And when miniature golf courses came around, he manufactured the green that was used in these golf courses.
Mm.
And he was always there ready to go into anything that was really
Yeah.
worth making money in. And he seemed to be very lucky doing it.
So what, as he grew older and reached,
84.
he lived to be
He died
84.
at 84.
So did he retire then?
No,
So-
he didn't retire. He got older. He took a job at Alameda Housing Project and walked around there delivering raises in rent to the people or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was a night watchman. And he did lots of things. But he walked mainly. And I'm sure that's why he lived so long. He walked all the time.
Now, when did he come to California? Did he come with Clemmy?
No. Well, I was already long here, so I don't know exactly when he did come. But he came from Platte City, Missouri, and all of Mother's family came with them, and they were the Moores, M-O-O-R-E.
And when he came out, had Clemmy already come out, and was she already at the Savoy Hotel in Oakland? Did that already happen?
No, I don't think
Don't
so.
remember.
I don't remember exactly the times on that.
Yeah. So while he was involved in these different businesses, you were growing up and
I helped him an awful lot. I used to help him keep books, and I used to roll all of his coin into rolls for the bank, and I'd go to the bank for him. I did an awful lot.
And how did that work with you being in school?
It didn't seem to bother the situation.
So you had a pretty typical educational experience, you think? I mean, grammar school and junior high school and high school.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember the names of those schools by any chance?
Well, yes. The junior high school I went to had been the high school, and then when they built the new high school, they turned that one into a junior high school. And I went to the high school that was built up on the hill, and it was a beautiful school for the day. But I had a long ways to walk home.
So, when did you get interested in foreign languages? Was that when you were first exposed to it in high school? Or?
Yes, it was. I had a teacher by the name of Ruby Dittymore, and she was an older lady who had learned Spanish by correspondence in Canada, and she was teaching Spanish at Blackwell High School. And when I went into her class for the first time, I knew that I was going to be a Spanish teacher. There was no question about it.
Was it her, or what
It
grabbed
was a
you?
fascination of languages.
Uh-huh.
They
And the way
just
she
fascinated
presented it really helped, or
Well, she was wonderful. She was a wonderful lady.
that's great.
Yeah. And she had a nephew there, Billy Warner, who was a classmate of mine. And he was in the school there. And he was her nephew.
So then you go through high school, and did you? I mean, were you a good student? Were you an average student?
No, I was better than average.
Huh? And when you
My grades were A's and B's, probably more B's than A's.
what other things were you interested in high school besides foreign languages?
Well, I was interested in dancing. I danced very well. I tap dance in Georgia, and I tap dance all over Blackwell and the countryside. Any kind of meeting that they would have Georgia and Billy come and tap dance for them as entertainment. And so I got to be a pretty good tap dancer. I won a contest once, and I was asked to go on the road with the troops with which I won the contest, but my parents wouldn't let me go.
Now, did you take tap dance lessons or?
Well, I did eventually,
Uh,
yes, from a very fine tap dancer in the town of Blackwell.
Now, was that was a pastime that gained a lot of notoriety as a result of motion pictures, or what? What
No, it
what sort of prompted
it wasn't
that?
that popular when Georgia and I started taking tap dance. Georgia and I used to tap dance all the way home from junior high school. We loved it. We tapped all the way home. I'm sure people in town thought we were nutty, but we loved the tap dancing. And so we both started taking lessons from the same man.
Any other recollections about being in high school and?
Oh yes, many. Yes, I disliked terribly science class, but I had a wonderful teacher in that class. Her last name was Mann. I can't remember her first name right now. It'll probably come to me if I think about it.
Yeah.
But she was a wonderful lady, but I just couldn't get interested in chemistry. It was something that I had no interest. It wasn't. What's the word? Oh,
Inspirational or
yeah.
didn't grab you?
Yeah, that's right. But that was. I became a dancer. I danced all my life after that. And I used to think to myself, I don't ever want to go through one day where I don't dance. If I do, that'll be the worst day of my life. I became a pretty good ballroom dancer too.
So the dancing sort of went hand in hand with music, I take it.
That's
then.
right.
Yeah.
And I had
And what was the music of that? Like when you were in high school and junior high school. What can you remember? Any of the musicians? Any of the popular songs?
well, yes, I can if I stop and think about it, because we had most of them on our piano at home.
Were they big? Was it big band kind of music? Like
It was swing, more
swing,
like swing.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So that would have been like Glenn Miller and Tony Dorsey, or is that it?
oh, yeah,
Tommy Dorsey and groups like that. Uh-huh.
But
And what did kids? How did they dress? What were some of the?
well, the girls wore
eccentricities.
bobby socks,
Oh, okay.
and they rolled down their socks, and they were bobby socks.
Right.
That's the way they wore.
Big full skirts with bobby socks, or
Well, I don't recall
remember that.
full skirts necessarily, but they were bobby socksers.
mm-hmm. And what kind of hairstyles did kids wear?
Most of them were short, bobbed hair,
Uh,
and I think that was the style.
and the boys were, short military type cuts.
Well, they wore short hair.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So then you graduate from high school, and you get the.
I want to tell you, I had a band teacher in high school that really made me interested in music. And he got a saxophone for me to play. And I joined the band and played saxophone. I never did learn to play clarinet, but I played the saxophone. And we had a marching band, and this wonderful, wonderful gentleman got me interested in music. And he saw to it that I got an instrument to play.
Yeah.
And so it was a baritone saxophone.
I've often wondered if people like that ever really know how many lives they touch.
Well, you
When
saw
introduce somebody to an instrument for the first time.
the music, Mr. The picture, Mr. What was his name?
Oh, Mr. Holland's Opus?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Holland's
What a
Opus.
great movie.
It was the same thing.
Yeah.
It was the same thing with him.
Yeah, that's
He
neat.
was that kind of a person.
Real passionate about it.
Uh-huh.
That's neat. So then you graduate from high school and you meet your real mother,
Well, yes.
sort of in that time
Yeah.
there. And you talked a little bit about that before.
But
One thing I wanted to ask about that, I think you said earlier that your real father, your birth father, if that's the right terminology, I don't know. Did you say his name was Eshelman?
yes, it was.
How do you know how that was spelled?
I don't know how it was spelled.
Uh-huh. Now that sounds like it's Jewish to me. Is that a Jewish?
I don't think so, but I
No.
don't really know.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he was not interested in the child that he spawned,
Mm-hmm.
and so she was on her own, and that's why I was.
Where was he from? Do you know anything about his?
I think he was from Arkansas City, Kansas, where she was from.
And do you know what his first name was?
No, I didn't.
Do you know anything about his family or
I think it was Bob.
Bob?
Yes, I think it was Bob.
Uh-huh. Do you know what he did for a living or
No.
anything about him?
No idea.
Mm-hmm. So then you graduate from high school and you go into the service? Is that what happened
No,
next?
not right away. I graduated from high school and came to California because I had Blackwell, Oklahoma had a glass plant where they made glass jars, and every summer I worked in the glass plant, and I learned to be a really sort of top selector. And so when I came to, I want to tell you this is a fact, when I came to Oakland, California, where they had another Hazel Atlas glass plant. The home Hazel Atlas glass plant was in my hometown, Blackwell, Oklahoma. But they had another one in Oakland. I came out here to get a job there because I had that skill. And I want to tell you something that's the absolute truth. I replaced 6 women. Those women on the layer did not know how to select correctly. So I was able to replace all 6 of them because I had the skill for doing it. That's no great thing as far as I'm concerned. It was just the fact that I had the skill. And I had learned it in the summertime when I would go work in the glass plant. And finally I became a foreman in the Oakland plant for a while, and then I got drafted.
And you went into the Air Force? And where was that? Did you go to Lackland or something?
No, I went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, believe it or not. I went to the airfield in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was on the train going to we didn't know where. The group of us that had gotten in together, and we looked out the window the next morning and saw this meat packing company. I can't think of the name of it now. That was so well known there. We knew that we were in South Dakota. We had hoped that we were going to the Stevens Hotel in Chicago, but we didn't make it.
Didn't make it that
So
far.
we were all radio operators and mechanics. That's what we were trained for.
So
in South Dakota.
when you got drafted, Did you have a choice to go into the Air Force as opposed to the Army or the Navy or something else? Or
Yes, I did.
okay, and you were elected to go into the Air Force.
That's right.
And where did you, when you got your draft notice, where did you go to? Like the Alameda?
I went to Sioux Falls, South
No,
Dakota.
but I mean, so when you got the notice, it just said come to Sioux Falls, or
No. I got inducted with a group of fellows, a whole bunch of them.
was that in Oakland somewhere? Or I mean, did you go to a?
I was in Fresno.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And we were carrying our packs, our backpacks, no, they weren't backpacks, they were bags, what they were.
Duffel bags.
Duffel bags, yeah, that's what they were. And we didn't know for sure where we were going when we got on the train. But all of us wanted to go to the Stevens Hotel in Chicago because we had been prepared. That was a big radio
Oh, I see.
operating place.
Okay.
And we wanted to go there. We were sure we were going there. We woke up the next morning, we saw Morrell Packing Company, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Broke our hearts.
So how long were you in Sioux Falls? Just a matter of weeks?
No,
No?
I was there, 3 years, I think.
3 years.
Long
So
enough to fall in love with Doris Iverson.
So you, while you were there, you were learning how to operate a radio on
Actually, what I was doing, I took 16 men through 13 classes teaching them to do the same thing in what were called BDs. 16 men had these places. They had to learn to operate a key, a telegraphic key. And they had to learn to, they each one had to make a receiver and a transmitter. That was part of they were not very great transmitters or receivers, but they had to learn to make one.
Right.
And everybody had to do that, and I taught them.
So you had
And that was very interesting the way I got that job, because I kept watching the, boards for the guys that I knew who were coming back from overseas. And I would always look at the death list, people who were killed. And so this one day after I graduated, I walked down to the what's his name? The fellow who ran the whole thing, the commander. And I went into his office, and there was a WAC working for him. And I said to her, I said, where do you go to sign up to stay on as a teacher? And there was a man who came out of his office, and he said, what's your name, soldier? And I told him. And so I went to graduation, and there was only one person picked out of that class to stay and teach. It was I. And I know it was because I stopped in there, and that CO came out and asked me what my name was. I know that's the why.
So was that your first exposure to teaching?
Yeah, really.
And was that something that you found to be really?
No, I did. I found that I loved it more.
So you really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That turned out to be fortuitous for you.
Yeah, sure did.
That's great. So you were there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And I met the most wonderful family there, the Breathwaites. They had a son who was gone, and they let me come to their house and use his bedroom, his bed, and they were just marvelous people. And I've always regretted that I didn't keep in touch with them.
Yeah.
And
so what happened after the service? When was that? Put a year on that.
oh gee,
40. Was the war over? Is that when you were done, or?
No, it wasn't over with yet.
So it had to be 43, 44. Somewhere.
Yeah, I was about 43.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, 43 when I went in.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
And then the war ended while you were in.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So then in 46 or so, you finished your tour of duty or whatever, and then you went to California? Or you went back to Oklahoma?
No, I didn't go to Oklahoma.
Well, somewhere in there you had a
I
blind
came
date,
back to
right?
California, huh?
Somewhere in there you had a rather important blind date, I seem to remember.
Important what?
Blind date.
I don't know what you're saying.
Isn't that how you met Mom?
Oh, a blind date.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's how I met her. I had a friend by the name of Wilton Dillon, and he had a girlfriend in Alva, Oklahoma, and he wanted me to go with him. And I said, well, I don't have a girlfriend. He said, well, I'll have her get you a blind date. And your mother was from Alva, so I met her on that blind date. And Wilton never did ever have anything else to do with his girlfriend, but I married the one I met.
And so you had gone to Oklahoma then shortly after getting out of Sioux Falls, it sounds like, and then that took place. When you'd been there in the service, right?
Yeah.
So that all kind of happened in the same time frame. So then what happened?
Well,
So you started dating and...
No. I lived in California, actually, before I got into service.
That's right, because you went out there to work in the glass plant.
So,
Then you got drafted,
yeah,
right?
and I came back to California.
Was your job still open to you at the glass plant?
Yes, it was. And I thought that was very interesting that it should be. They were keeping those open for fellows that were drafted.
Right.
So, my intention was to go to the University of California. And I didn't let anything keep me from doing it. After I was in the service, then I got my education on the GI Bill. And all I had to do was go sign up.
So what was it that made you decide or prompted you to...
Major in Spanish.
Well, no, just to decide to go to college. I mean, what...
Well, I knew I was going to go to college all the time. My mother used to rock me when I was little and say, you're going to be my college boy, aren't you? She did this. She ingrained that into me so that that's all there was to it. I knew that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the day I enrolled at the University of California, I had a good friend by the name of Paul DeFord. I was in line, and I heard this voice back, and I turned around and I said, my gosh, that's Paul DeFord. Sure enough, there was Paul. He was signing up for Berkeley, too.
Where'd you know him from?
From the service.
From the
Yeah.
service, uh-huh.
We became great pals. We really did. And I hated it when he died. He died of cirrhosis of the liver from drinking too much. But he was a great friend.
So what was Berkeley like then?
Berkeley was wonderful. Your mother knows.
I mean, do you remember, anything about the campus or the town?
Well, I mean, Lucille knows. I mean,
Right.
Berkeley?
Yeah, I mean, what was...
Great.
I mean, Berkeley's gone through so many changes over the years. Just curious if you could...
Well, they had a
Give a
wonderful
little
library,
flavor.
little library, which I lived in practically. And it was just a great university.
Was the Campanile, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Tower, it was there?
Yeah. And I met Lucille because I was trying to work and go to school too. And when I had to work and miss my classes, I borrowed Lucille's notes. She took wonderful notes. And I was just lucky that I found somebody like her.
That's great. And she was also a Spanish
Major.
major, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you spent 4 years basically at Berkeley, is that right? Or
No, I did it in 3 years. I got credit for 21 units of all the work I had done in the Air Force.
Oh,
So I did
That's
it in
nice.
3 years.
okay. And what was how was it that Mom came out to Berkeley? What were the circumstances around that?
She came out and got a job teaching at the University of California
So she had graduated from Oklahoma University.
from Norman, yes, the University of Oklahoma in
Right.
Norman.
Right.
And she got a job in Berkeley at the university there. And we were living together. We already had a couple of kids on the way,
Right.
and we started the family. And
What? Let's go back a little bit on her side of the family. Now, she grew up in Alva. And where was that in relationship to Blackwell? That was also in the northern part of the
it was
state.
northern Oklahoma too. It was almost directly east of Blackwell.
Okay. And it was. Now,
Her
what do
father
you
was
remember
a
about
lawyer.
her father and her mother?
Her father was a lawyer,
Uh-huh.
and he was a district.
Was he a judge or a.
Well, no, he was a district. What do you call him?
District attorney?
District attorney. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And then
And she was an only child.
she was, yes,
And her mother
Graham.
was Anna
Lastly,
Lastly. Right. And she was a teacher at a music college?
she
Or
her,
a voice
her brother,
teacher?
Her brother her name was Ford,
Right.
and her brother paid for her education at the Juilliard School of Music. So she was very well trained.
Did she graduate
She was
from
a
the
singer.
Juilliard School of
Yes.
Music?
And she was a singer. She was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why your mother sang so well. And that's why my daughter sings so well.
Right. Now,
Your sister.
what happened with her husband, Mom's father? Didn't he die at a young age?
Yes. He had come to California to visit us, and then he went back, and back home he wasn't there very long till he died. And,
Do you have any idea how old he was?
I don't remember.
What do you remember?
The age 57 sticks in my mind,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure of that.
What was the cause of death?
Angina.
Okay. Do you know anything about his family?
Oh yes,
What those roots were?
the Lastleys were a well-known group in that part of the country, you know, family, and I didn't know very much about them.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Were they from Oklahoma? Did they migrate there?
Yeah, they were all from Oklahoma.
Did he have any brothers and sisters? Or do you remember?
Bob Lastly did not have, I don't think.
What did his father do? Or do you have any idea?
You know, I have a feeling that he was a lawyer also.
Really?
Yeah.
And then what about on
It's so long
Grand's?
since I've thought about it. Huh?
Sure. What about on Grand's side? What kind of a family did she come from?
What was her name? Ford.
Right?
Yeah.
And do you know anything about the Fords?
Well, yes, her brother was pretty well to do. He lived in California, in the South. Can't think of the name of the city. No. Oh, see, we should have rehearsed some of this stuff before.
Oh, that's okay. Did she have any brothers and sisters? Well, obviously she had a brother. Any other siblings?
I don't think so.
And,
I don't think so.
and was her family from Oklahoma too? I seem to remember they came from
No, I don't think so.
somewhere else. But it was a Midwestern state, I think.
You know, I haven't thought about these things for so long.
Sure. Where does Aunt Bess come into the picture?
Well, she was just a good friend.
Okay.
She was just a good.
She was a good friend of Grant's.
Yes.
So, and they had played music together and performed together, I think.
In
Right?
her old band.
Right. Now, was that some kind of a traveling band or something?
I don't think so. No.
Uh-huh. And Bess was the drummer, as I remember.
That's right.
Right. So there was no direct relation there. That was just a good.
They were just good
That's
friends.
good friends. Okay. Well, I never was sure about that.
Wow.
Okay, so then you graduate from Berkeley
Right?
with a major in Spanish, and by then, that had to be like 1949. So
1949.
by then, Doug had made his appearance on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he was born in, I want to say 48, right? And Margaret was about
I
to.
think he was born in 47.
And then Margaret was 50, born in 50. So is that when you moved to? It was about that time that you moved to Willows, right? When you got your first teaching job.
That's right.
When that was in
County
high school. Right. And you were there for just a couple of years, right? Because in '54,
Yeah,
Arroyo High School opened,
that's right.
and that's when you.
Well, I came down here from Willows to get a job the year before, and I got a job that paid me $2,000 more than I was making at Grand County High School.
Right.
So they raised my salary there, and that worked so good. The next year I came back down and got another job.
Right. Right. And
And
then you.
this time they didn't want to raise it that much, so I came down here to teach.
And you taught at that high school for 34 years or
Arroyo High School,
36 years?
28 years.
28 years? You were one of the first.
We opened it up.
Yeah, right. That's right.
And I think we had one of the best schools in all of California. I really believe that. Yeah.
Shall we take a break?
Let's take a break.
Okay, we're live again.
Huh?
We're live.
We're live again. Oops.
Pardon me. So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, that I think
I hope I can answer them.
will bring back some memories for you. When you were growing up, you talked about what your dad did and
Uh-huh.
You know, your brothers and sisters and all of that. And did you used to take regular family vacations?
Absolutely. Every summer we went either to Colorado or to Arkansas.
So was there a special resort that your father liked to go to, or
Yes.
or your
In Colorado, we always went to Manitou Springs, Colorado, and to miss the hot weather in Oklahoma. And then in Arkansas, we went down to Hot Springs, Arkansas. And we vacationed there a lot. And Aline always was there and always found a girlfriend. A boyfriend, I mean. Everywhere we went, we looked forward to when was Aline going to pick up her first boyfriend in that area. And she did. She always did really well.
Well, that's funny. So what was the weather like? I mean, what was it like to live in Oklahoma? Was it
Well, it was...
beastly hot?
No, well, it was in the summer. It was very hot.
How hot was
Well,
hot?
it get up to 95 sometimes.
Was it humid or was it dry?
It was dry,
Oh,
very dry.
so sort of like the Central Valley,
Yeah.
California. Sure, bring that down to
It was very dry. Oh, thank you, sweetie.
Get my arm in the picture here.
That's all right.
Do you remember any special stories or anything that your grandfather would tell you? Do you ever remember sitting on his knee, or your
My
father?
grandfather.
Your father?
My dad. Oh, yes. The thing about my family, the family I grew up in, everything was funny. If it wasn't funny, it wasn't worth talking about. I mean,
Maybe that's why Clemmy was so happy all the
they
time.
liked to joke all the time. It didn't matter what it was about. And
I think Evan has
you've
some
heard
of
me
that.
talk about Mary Helen. Mary
No.
Helen Harris.
No.
Well, Mary Helen, I just talked to her not long ago on the phone. Her father, Ray Harris, and Dad were very close friends. And when you got them together, they would not stop laughing. They laughed till the tears ran down their faces. Everything you could think of was funny. One of the funniest ones was Ruth, his wife, taught school out to a little country school in Oklahoma. And they started kidding about the things that went on in that school. And it was just, it was as funny as it could be, you know, because they were just ornery.
Right.
And they were having a good time always.
They were making fun.
Well, it was in a way, but I thought you knew Mary Helen.
No, I never heard of her actually.
Well, Dad was in our hometown, Blackwell. Dad was a very highly respected person, and he was one that almost everybody came to if they were in trouble. If they needed money, or if they needed to get out of jail, or something like that happened, Dad seemed to be the guy that was called upon.
Uh-huh. You were talking about making fun.
Oh yeah, they always.
Do you remember any stories about playing tricks on your brothers and sisters, or on probably in your case, be more likely on your cousins? Because
I played tricks on Dad
your siblings were so much older.
quite a bit.
Uh-huh.
Every time he'd get out there watering with the hose in the front yard, I'd go around and sneak around and turn the hose off. Well, about the third time I did that, he would yell, "Annie, come out here and get this kid." So when Mama got in the picture, I had to leave.
Right. Right.
I really had to go then.
I seem to remember you telling me a story about playing with, was it Georgia? Was your good friend growing up?
She was my niece. Georgia is my niece.
Well, who
Because
was it?
she's my oldest brother's daughter. But she and I were about the same age, and we were like brother and sister. That's
Right.
what I told you.
Right, and you lived just down the street from each
Down
other.
the alley.
Down the alley, right.
Uh-huh.
And so you would just duck out the house and run down the alley, and you guys would go play,
Oh, we always played together all the time, yeah.
right?
And of
No,
course, she would usually go home yelling and screaming, "Billy, push me into the stickers," or something like that.
did you have any pets growing up?
Any pets? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we have pets. One time Dad had 28 German police dogs.
You're kidding.
No. He liked
28?
raising German police dogs.
What, do you have a kennel or?
Not really. Yeah, we had a big old barn in the back, and he used the barn.
How big was this place? It must have been huge.
No,
How many acres, or do you have any feel for that?
no, it wasn't. It was maybe it was a half an acre, maybe
Uh-huh.
a little more.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of mouths to feed.
Well, he
What's
sold them. You know, he raised them and sold them.
Oh, I see. So it's like a business.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was there anybody in your family that was especially artistic?
He.
Uh-huh.
No, Aline was kind of good,
Uh-huh.
and
Was she a painter or a sketcher?
she did some of that, some painting. But she played the piano too, and Clemmy played. You know, Clemmy played the piano extremely well.
Really?
She played it mostly by ear, but she was great. And she played for the silent movies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. She played in the silent movie houses.
Wow.
And whenever they had horses, she played the things she called horses. It sounded like horses running, you know.
Oh,
and,
right.
and then when they had the conflagration of them, she played something she called fire. She called it that, but that was music that fit the picture on the screen.
Right.
And
That's neat.
she did a lot of that, playing for silent movies.
So what was her? You said that was by ear, so she had no formal education, and
Clemmy?
yeah.
Oh yeah, she had an 8th grade education. That was the most anybody had in those days.
Uh-huh.
I was the first one to go to college in my family.
Right.
And Aline and I were the first ones to graduate from high school in our family. Up to that point, it had only been eighth grade.
Uh-huh. So what were the what was the political attitudes of your mother and father?
Democrats. We were Democrats.
Uh-huh.
Dad was a Democrat, thoroughgoing Democrat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when Roosevelt was elected the first time, happy days are here again, you know. Oh, golly, it was great celebrations
Right.
in our family.
Then 2 more times after that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they were all Democrats.
Uh-huh. I guess that's pretty typical of that part of the country, wasn't it?
Maybe.
What about religious attitudes? What were the
Well,
what was the religious background?
they were all religious, but not practicing religious. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And one time I joined a church. they called home and asked if it was all right if I joined the church. I went to a church meeting and then I went forward. You know what you had to do to join.
Right.
And I was just very young. I think I was maybe 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
And
And the church called to see if it was
called
okay
and
for
see if
you
it
to
was
join.
all right. Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. But
That's interesting.
most
So
of the-
they were.
most of them were either Baptists or they belonged to what was called the Christian church.
hmm
And all of my family belonged to the Christian church.
And is that sort of what ultimately became the Congregationalists, the United Church
Well,
of Christ? Was that
yeah.
part of that movement?
Probably. I don't know, but
Sort of a
they
non-denominational.
weren't Catholics. None of them were
Protestants.
Catholics.
But not churchgoers necessarily, maybe just
No,
on special
not
occasions.
regularly. I actually, mother was a, what was she? I can't think of it. She was, and she practiced,
Christian Scientist?
Christian Science, yes.
Uh-huh.
She was a Christian
So she didn't, she was reluctant to get medical help when she was sick?
Oh, no, she really wasn't. She didn't practice it to that extent.
I see, okay.
Yeah. But she believed in Christian Science. Mary Baker or Eddie or whatever her name was. You
I
know.
don't know. So your father didn't have your mother didn't have a problem with the fact that your father sold alcohol, huh?
Oh, no. No, he was a prohibitionist all along. Long before prohibition was done away with. I mean, he was against he wasn't
He was
prohibition.
anti-prohibition.
He was an anti-prohibition.
Right.
Yeah, he believed that they all really believed that people should be able to do things that they want to do and be responsible for themselves.
Uh-huh.
That was their belief.
Right.
But they were all Democrats, every one of them. I had several uncles on the Moore side, on mother's side. Uncle Walter Moore and Uncle Willie Moore. Uncle Willie had in Blackwell, had a delicatessen. Really a marvelous delicatessen that he ran. And Uncle Willie used to spend Sunday dinners at our house all the time. I grew up with Uncle Willie.
Uh-huh.
Being there for Sunday dinners, you know.
That's great.
And then Uncle Walter and Uncle Mitt. Uncle Mitt his name was Merritt, and they called him Mitt. Well, a strange thing happened to him. He and his wife Daisy Moore, had a daughter, and she was beautiful, really beyond words. And she won every beauty contest she ever entered, you know. And I never knew what happened to her. I would sure like to have found out, but I didn't know. And I don't know, maybe somebody back there knows, like Jerry Tyler or some of those people might have known what happened to her. But I would like to know.
You mean she disappeared, or
Well, I don't know what happened. You know, people.
you just lost track of
You
her?
move out, you lose track of it.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
Yeah.
It was nothing mysterious.
No,
it was
nothing,
just.
no.
I see.
And but Uncle Mitt his name was Merritt Moore. We call him Uncle Mitt. And he went to bed one day and never got out of bed. That was
Wow.
it. And Dad said, well, he just didn't want to face his problems, that's all. That was Dad's theory on it. And so he went to bed and wouldn't see anybody, talk to anybody, or anything else. And he spent the rest of his days in bed, which he lived quite a long time after I remember that, you know.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So he was a little buggy, I guess.
So, what?
Oh, Irene was her name. Irene Moore. She was the one. Now, I've been trying to think of her name for months, and suddenly it comes to me.
Right.
Her name was Irene,
Yeah.
and she was beautiful.
I'll be darned. So, house that you lived in?
Oh, it's great.
Was it a big house, a
Mhm.
small house,
It
two
was big.
stories?
Dad won in the poker game.
You're kidding.
Oh. He, they lived on, West Bridge or some part over there. And then this house was on 212 West Lincoln. And it was a great big house. It had, how many rooms? It had about 10 rooms.
Jeez.
And it had a porch that went all the way around it.
Wrapped around.
The outside way, all the way around it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And, well, it didn't go all the way through the back because there was a screened-in back porch back there.
Uh-huh.
And it was a beautiful house.
Was it wood-sided, or
Yeah,
Was
it
it-
was,
do you know what kind of style it was, or?
like these siding like that, you know.
Right.
And,
The lap siding, it overlaps.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Was it painted, or
oh, yes.
what color was it?
And it was white.
Uh-huh.
And but all the inside was paper. The
Wallpaper
wallpaper
with hardwood floors.
popular in those days. It wasn't the small hardwood floors, but the wider one, you know.
Yeah. It was a 2-story.
Yes.
Must have been that many rooms.
Yeah, I used to play on the roof of the front porch, you know, and how I kept from falling off of that, I do not know. But they didn't pay any attention to me. They just, I go upstairs and there are 2 windows on the front bedroom, and I'd open the windows and I'd go out on the porch. I spent a lot of time out there on the porch, roof of the porch.
Right. Did it have like a spiral staircase, or was it just a?
No, it was a straight up and
Straight
down
up.
staircase. And
Did it have a banister you could play on?
no, there was no banister.
Uh-huh.
It was just about. It wasn't a wide staircase. It just went straight up
Yeah.
to the second floor.
Right.
And Aline had her bedroom up there, and Alan had his bedroom up there, and I usually slept in the bedroom with Dad and Mom, because I was in a crib still.
Right. Right.
And you know how?
So he won that house in a poker game.
Yes, he won it in a poker game. They'd been living on West Bridge or some street like that, and he moved in right away. The whole family. The last time I was back there, the front porch had been removed. I probably just
So the house is still there.
deteriorated. Oh yeah, it's still there. And I knocked on the door and I told the lady who I was, and I said, "Did you know Marshall Field?" She said, "I bought this house from Marshall Field." She said,
That's funny.
and but it wasn't anything like it was when I was little.
Yeah.
And we had trumpet vines that grew on almost all the way around it. You know, flowers. You know what trumpet vines look like? Yeah, and there was always a big garden in the backyard. Dad always had a big vegetable garden.
Just the back porch was screened in, not the one that
That's
wrapped
right,
around?
just the back porch.
Did you
And
have?
there was a cellar that we could enter from the back porch, and then one from the outside. And the reason was in case of tornadoes.
Uh-huh.
And then, strangely enough, beside the entrance to the cellar was a cistern. There was a cistern with a big round thing like that, and he had it covered over with cement. But I had dropped the rocks in, I could hear them go down and hit the water.
So how prevalent were tornadoes? Did they?
Oh, all the time, like they are now.
Yeah.
They had them all the time.
And
And-
were they just totally devastating?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But we went into the cellar from the back porch, and then it was all dirt under there. I mean, they had cut out the dirt, and there was shells cut, and we would put food and stuff up there on that while the tornadoes were going on. It was very safe.
Yeah.
it seemed very safe.
Uh-huh.
Of course, the house, the tornadoes never took the house away. If it had, that would have been it. You know?
Sure. What else do you remember about, the environment? We talked a little bit about the weather and the tornadoes
Well,
and stuff.
I used to.
Were there lots of bugs?
Oh, there were lots of mosquitoes.
Yes.
I hated those darn things.
And June bugs?
June bugs, yes.
Those big old
Yeah,
things?
they were all over. But we didn't have anything like those bugs you get in houses sometimes.
Scorpions?
No,
Oh, termites. No, cockroaches.
cockroaches. Yeah,
Right.
We never had cockroaches.
Yeah.
But I guess some people did, but we didn't.
Uh-huh. Just kept
And
clean house.
we had a big backyard, and then there was a chicken house back on the alley, and there was about this much space between the fence and the chicken house. And I would get back there, and I'd run a chicken into this pathway between the fence and the chicken house, and I'd chase him out the other side. Well, once in a while, the darn things would turn on me and start flapping at me and scare me to death, But Mother would always put me on one side of that thing, and she would try to get a chicken in there to get it so she could kill it for dinner.
Yeah.
And then I was very bird shy for a long time because these darn chickens would start flapping at me and scare me to death. I was just a little kid.
So she would catch them and then just cut their heads off? And...
She would wring their necks.
Oh, she would?
One ring.
Oh.
She really had that
And then
down
pluck
pat.
them and cook them,
Uh-huh. But what I used to do, when I knew she was going to get a chicken, then I would take one of these tubs, wash tubs,
Yeah.
and I put it up on its side. Then I'd take some seed and wheat and lead the chicken up to inside, and then I'd plop that down on top of the chicken. That's the way I caught the chicken.
That's funny.
Now we had a big barn for a garage back there, and it had a loft. And I tied a rope up at the top, and would get up in my loft and come down on the rope. Well, I built a ladder by nailing boards on the inside of the garage, and I go up the ladder and come down on the rope. Well, I made Georgia do that too. I made her go up the ladder, but she couldn't come down the rope. What am I mean to her?
So do you remember anything about holidays, like any Thanksgiving
yes.
or Christmas memories? Or
Oh my gosh, yes. Christmas was the delight. Yeah,
a big meal, everybody came over. And,
exactly.
uh,
And I mean, everything was on the table.
right.
Unbelievable.
Did you always sing Christmas
Alan-
carols? And,
Uh-huh. And Aline always made something called overnight salad, which was made with marshmallows and all kinds of sweet stuff. And
Kind of like
that
a
was my
Waldorf?
favorite, and whipped cream.
Right.
And that was my favorite dish that Aline made. It's her overnight salad.
That's great. Speaking of favorite dishes, do you remember Mom used to make that sort of like
What's
chocolate pudding cake,
that? Oh yeah.
where it was cake on top and pudding? It wasn't pudding, what it was
Yeah.
like.
Uh-huh.
I'd give anything for that recipe. That stuff was great.
Yeah.
When you look back on your growing up with your mother and father, is there anything that you realize about their lives that you didn't understand when you were growing up?
Well, I would say there was probably quite a lot that I didn't understand. I understood Dad's life very well because I worked with him all the time. I would go to his place of business with him, and he would come home with a sack of money. And he'd always brought his money home every evening. And one day, I liked a kid. We had French doors, and there was a column down. As you came into our house, you came into sort of a vestibule, and there were two French doors with a column like this. So one day I got behind this column, and Dad was coming in with his money and everything. And when he came through the French door, I said, "Boo!" Well, he took his fist, like that. He knocked me all the way across the floor against the other side of that room, And then he gave me 50 cents. I didn't cry, but it hurt. And I mean, it really hurt.
So you really surprised him.
That he hit me, yeah.
Right.
But it was a reflex.
It was more of a reaction.
Yeah.
Than it. Yeah,
And,
it wasn't intentional.
Because he had his sack of money with him.
That's pretty funny.
So I learned that, and I didn't do that anymore, I'll tell you.
Do you remember your father having any kind of a favorite saying or?
Yeah, I do.
You've had ones like, half past kissing time, time to kiss again. And,
Yeah.
you know,
He always had something.
time all fools are dead, don't you feel sad?
Yeah. He had lots of things like that. That was part of his growing up.
Right.
But I offhand, I can't think of anything now.
Yeah. Did you tell me once that he used to, take in people that had a run of bad luck?
Oh, well, he didn't take them into the house.
Right, but I mean, he'd help them.
Oh, yes. He was always doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Did he give them like
what
jobs at the?
Yeah, in his
work
place
to
of
do?
business.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd give him a janitor's job or something like that
Right.
quite often.
Yeah.
And but I've seen him hand out to people who would come in his business, into the bar, and want some money. I've seen him give money out just time and time and time.
Did he have some kind of a credit granting process? Where people could come in and
It was all on faith.
that's what I mean.
I'm positive of that.
I mean, someone could come in and get a meal or a drink or something, and keep a tab, and then pay it up when they got paid, or
No.
oh,
He would give him money to go elsewhere. Because Dad.
but did he have regular customers? I mean, people that he trusted, and
Oh
that he just
Well, and one thing he did is, if he didn't trust a person, he put me with a little timer thing, and I was supposed to, every time the cash register rang up, I was supposed to hit that, and I would sit there and sit there and sit there and do that for hours. It seemed like wasn't all that long though,
yeah.
and that's the way he found out if anybody was knocking down on it.
Oh, so you mean people that were working for him?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any of those people? Any?
Oh yeah, I remember lots of them. Yes, one man that would come. Oh, he would be gone for months or so, and then he would come back to work for Dad. And oh golly, I was just thinking of him the other day. Oh, I can't think of his name right now, but I will think of it.
Did you?
Galloway, and they call him Prunes.
Prunes.
Prunes Galloway. Yeah. You see, everybody had a nickname back there.
Right.
Everybody. and they call him Prunes.
That's
Now, probably had some aspect that's not too salacious attached to the meat, you know.
yeah. What about, like, were there any kind of family heirlooms that he passed on to you, like a stopwatch or?
Well, there were some, there were some. What happened was, when all of us came to California, and Dad came last, there was a large trunk upstairs that were filled with those things. He swore that a local person there, and I don't want to say the name, had gotten in and stolen all that stuff. Dad swore it was fast.
Really?
That's what happened, And he decided it happened when he left for California. And,
Was he going to go back and get it or something?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
That would have been neat to have some of that. Some of those things.
Well, yeah, there were lots of things that I had made for Mother in school, like I made a hot pan holder in the form of a chicken, and I made it in school under the teacher's supervision.
Right.
But I would have loved to have had that.
Yeah.
And then Mama used to keep on a curtain door that went out to the screen in the back porch. There was a curtain on that door. And all my 100s that I got in class, she covered that whole curtain clear down to the floor with these 100s. I'd get 100. It'd be like a little piece of paper, like a little metal or something, but only out of paper.
Right.
And she had that whole place covered with those 100s I got for spelling. They were all for spelling.
It must be where Ross and Casey get it. They're really good spellers.
Huh?
Ross and Casey are both really good
Are they?
spellers. Yeah.
Well,
Sounds
they
cool,
come by
actually.
correctly by the grandpa.
Right.
I never did have any trouble with spelling.
So you were living in that house during the Depression, weren't you?
Yes, sir, we were.
What was that like?
But we didn't have a depression.
You didn't feel it?
No.
But did you see it in the town? Or did you see it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And well, one of the bad things was when Oklahoma was nothing but dust, the Dust Bowl. Now, we didn't have water running. We didn't have anything but mud come out of the spigots, But everybody had that. That wasn't...
Right. So did you have a well?
Well, we had that cistern that I told you
Yeah, right.
about. And it had a pump on it. And the pump was in the house. And you go into the pantry and prime it, and then you could pump water out of it. And it would come out of the cistern. And I remember we used to have an old time ice box and have to take the water out from under the ice box all the time.
Right. Put new ice back in there.
Yeah.
That's funny. What would you see when you open the icebox door?
Well, I usually saw things that I like to eat.
Did you have, was your milk delivered and?
Yes, it was in bottles. And in the wintertime, when it was frozen over, the milk and cream, the cream was on top, would come up out of the top of the bottle,
Right.
And
Sure.
push the cap off with it.
Right. Did you ever collect those little caps as a kid?
No, never did.
Uh,
They were so common, there wouldn't have been
Yeah.
any reason.
Right. So you had chicken, so you didn't have an egg man. You just went out to the coop probably and got your
Yeah.
own eggs.
Well, no, we did have, later on, We had a woman who delivered eggs to us.
And what about laundry? Was that all done at the house, or did your father
She and mother did it.
send shirts
she
out?
Had, she had two big sinks on the back porch, and she would have. There was a gas burner. I think there were either 3 or 4 burners on this, and she'd put her tubs on there and heat the water.
Hmm.
And she had one of these long tubs like this, you know.
Now
She did all of her own washing.
you said that. I think you said that your older brother Frederick was the one that listened to the radio all the time.
Yeah, well, when he moved into his own home.
Oh. Well, what about in your house?
Well,
did you
I
listen
didn't
to
know him any other time but in his own home.
Oh.
He was already.
He was already out of the house. Well, what about in your house? Did you listen to music a lot?
We sure
Did
did.
you listen to the radio or
Dad had every new thing that came out. He had a beautiful Victrola.
Victrola? I was going to ask if he had
And, yeah. And I used to stand up on a chair to do it, and they used to. Everybody would say, "Billy, let's put on." What were some of those things? Are You Lonesome Tonight or something like that?
Uh-huh.
And I'd pick it out and give it to them, and they, none of them could understand how I knew which one to
Where
pick
they
out.
So was the house a quiet house, or was it
It was
filled
fairly
with
quiet.
noise? I mean, how would you
It was
describe
fairly
it?
quiet.
Yeah,
Yeah, and usually when I was there, it was only Mom and Dad and me.
right.
Alan moved out very early and lived at the fire station. And Aline married, and Dorothy married, and
Clemmy did too.
He did,
Right.
and it was just us in the house.
Was there any place in the house that was like especially scary, like a basement or an attic or anything?
I had lived in that attic.
Yeah.
Everything that I could find. Dad had a set of old drums, snare drums, you know. That was in it. I used to go in the attic and fiddle around with those.
Yeah.
But Dad played those once upon a time. He also played a harmonica, and he had a brace like this and his banjo. Dad was good on the banjo. He
Really?
really played the banjo very well.
And he could play harmonica at the same
At
time?
the same time, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he'd like to do that.
What about a fireplace?
he
Did
was
you
a
have a big
wonderful dad.
fireplace?
Huh?
Did you have a big fireplace? Or?
No, we didn't. We had no big fireplace at all. We had one of these little gas stoves in the living room. And then in the wintertime, we had a big wood stove that they used.
And that heated the house?
Pretty well, yeah.
Wow. So what were the winters like? Were they really cold?
They were really cold, yeah.
But did you get
I'd go
snow
out-
or was it just cold wind?
I would go out with Mama, and she would take the clothes off the line, which were stiff, frozen stiff, and I have to bring them in.
Wow.
I remember this, bringing in these frozen stiff clothes, you know. I didn't like doing it very much, but she
Yeah,
made me do it.
right. So what do you remember as your favorite season growing up?
You know, I really wasn't that aware of the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a kid.
Was it the kind of place where you really got brilliant fall colors, or was it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but that never was interesting to me as it was to other people.
Mhm. Were there? Did the house have a library?
Not as such, no.
So were they avid readers at all? I mean, I think you said that your somebody else had
Yeah,
been the
Lou's
one
father, Bob Foster.
right had been the one.
No,
that
they were avid readers, as I recall. I had a little library of things and books that people bought me,
right,
you know.
right.
But,
Did they
I was the library nut.
did they follow the news at all, or were they just
Oh, yeah.
kind of more tied up in just
Dad-
day-to-day lives?
Dad bought every new thing that came out. When the Atwater Kent radio came out, that was the best you could buy. He bought one. And he bought a kind of a disc with a top that came down, and he had these radio inside. And I guess that was maybe to keep Billy from getting into it, or I don't know why.
Yeah.
But he would he bought the most beautiful Victrola you could ever see or ever have.
So
And I used to wind that. Even I.
Where's Lucille?